Hello, I'm Wilf Pyle, and welcome to Saskatchewan Sportsman. Tonight, my guest is Ed Bijan, Executive Director of the Saskatchewan Wildlife Federation. Ed, welcome to the show.
It's nice to be here, Wilf.
I think we want to ask a few questions about the Wildlife Federation, its history, its background, the number of members, just those kinds of things. I think in this show we want to cover the corporate view, the corporate background to your organization, Ed.
Good. Well, we go back a long ways, Wilf. We were incorporated in 1929. Of course, there were quite a few sportsmen around prior to that that sort of did the organizational things to get us going. We are currently at about 34,000 members. That makes us per capita the largest conservation group on earth that I know of. We have 137 branches in the province, so we are represented in every nick and cranny that you can find anywhere in Saskatchewan. That tends to constitute a sort of a watchdog group that is always about Saskatchewan to see what's going on, whether it's forest harvesting, poaching they can keep an eye on, programs that are taking place, and it constitutes a very large body of men and women to help us carry out our programs as well and to help us with our financing.
And these are obviously men and women dedicated to wildlife, interested in hunting and fishing.
Very much so. We have had a number of women who have served as branch presidents, and a number of the ladies have also helped out on our President's Council, which is our management body in Saskatchewan. We have 6 regions in the province, basically 3 down each side of the province, and we elect a regional chairman and a vice president from each of those regions, making 12 people. Then our president, our immediate past president, and myself form the President's Council that are there to advise the president in his decision making. Now, he can make that decision any way he wants. It's an unwise president that would go against his council, the advice of his council. But it's worked very well. We've never had a bad president. We simply don't stand for it. It doesn't work. Our council keeps them all honest.
Tell me a bit about the goals and objectives of, say, first the provincial organization and then perhaps differentiate that down to the regional level.
We basically, on a provincial basis, and our central office under myself is in Moose Jaw, upstairs in the post office building. If you're going by, stop in for a cup of coffee. We've got 5 others on staff. We have a super program director, a lands coordinator that does our land purchases and looks after our Habitat Trust program. We have a girls running computers and looking after the mail and the mail outs, as well as an accountant on staff.
So it's a fairly large organization in terms of a privately funded group.
It is by most standards, I expect. You say privately funded, and I should add that we raise all of our own money. January the 1, when we go into the office, we know that in that next 12 minutes, in 12 months, we've got $1 million to find to keep the doors open and keep our programs running. So it keeps you very, very busy, not just on programs and carrying out the things that you're dedicated to doing, but also raising the money to make it happen.
Now, let's just talk a bit about fundraising. What sort of mechanisms or what are the sources for your revenues? Are they mostly memberships?
Our management money, our administrative money comes in from our membership. Now that provides, we have to buy out of that. The newsletter, and some people have probably seen the new Outdoor Edge, and you've written for it.
You bet.
It provides our insurance programs for all of our members that has principally a liability, third-party liability insurance, so that when our members are in the field, they know that any damage they might do, whether it's accidental, can be covered by the insurance program. It's really an insurance program that we take out on behalf of the landowner of Saskatchewan.
So this insurance program is one of the major features of Federation membership?
Some people will tell you that, and some people probably think it is. I think our work, our basic work in terms of habitat, fisheries, wildlife, waterfowl, is what we're there for.
Perhaps, Ed, you could tell me a bit about some of the programs. Perhaps you could highlight 3 or 4 of the main programs.
I'll do some of the things that we've done legislatively first, Wilf. Back in, well, we started, as a matter of fact, as an impost on our license, the crop insurance program. Crop depredation insurance program. The livestock compensation program was started at our request by an increase in our license fees. In 1968, we recognized that one of the major problems in Saskatchewan was lost habitat. It was just disappearing at an absolutely alarming rate. And as that habitat disappeared, our game populations fell at the same time. So we recognized if anybody was going to do something about it, it had to be the sportsmen. So we asked them to double our license fees and create the Wildlife Development Fund. As you know, that currently puts about $1.2 million a year of our license fees into a special fund to purchase endangered wildlife habitat.
So just for the record then, what percentage of a current hunting license goes into the Wildlife Development Fund?
I believe it's about 30%.
A third.
1/3.
Sure.
Yes. We then did the same thing for the fisheries licenses. Doubled the price of the fisheries license, and government have never turned us down when we went to give them some money. And we currently have about $1.2 million going into fisheries enhancement programs as well. Well, we weren't long in finding that not everybody out there would sell that critically endangered wildlife habitat to governments of whatever stripe. And we decided to start our own fund, which was the birth in 1978 of the Wildlife of our own Habitat Trust Fund. We started out on a simple premise. If the sportsman was prepared to buy his car and his refrigerator and his 10-speed bicycle on time, we'd let him buy wildlife habitat on time. So for a contribution of $10 a month, $120 a year, he'd be a sponsor of the Wildlife of the Habitat Trust Fund. Well, it's grown and grown and grown since then, from fundraising suppers on a branch level and on a regional level and on a provincial level, to the point where we raise about $500,000 a year now to go into that fund.
So just let me interrupt for a second here, Ed. This money then is used directly for the purchase of habitat lands?
Yes, it does.
And it's also used then for fish enhancement programs?
Not very much if it goes into fish enhancement funds. Our branches tend to support that program very strongly in fisheries enhancement.
So is land then directly purchased by the Wildlife Federation through the Habitat Trust Fund? And if indeed it is, how many acres would you currently hold in
the Saskatchewan Wildlife Federation and the Sportsmen of Saskatchewan, the people that support us, are currently the largest private landowners in Saskatchewan. We have something in the neighborhood of 40,000 acres. Of that, over 3,000 acres have been direct contribution.
Now, these are critical wildlife lands then?
They have to first of all pass the same criterion that the Wildlife Development Fund, that they be critical to specific species of wildlife before we'll buy it.
So give me an example then of some of the species that we might expect to be protected.
Just about every species, including the non-game species.
I think that's an important point. The Wildlife Federation supports non-game species as well. It's not just hunters and fishermen.
We spend a lot of our money on the burrowing owl program. We spend money on creating nesting habitat for piping plovers. All of the predator species, the bird species, all enjoy the same sanctity within those wildlife habitat blocks as do the game populations that we're so interested in. We had a situation down just northwest of Moose Mountain Provincial Park, where there was 7 quarter sections joined together. And he wouldn't sell it to government. He didn't want to pass it on to the rest of the family for fear it would be cleared. And he sold those 7 sections to us, the Cross Ranch, in one block at an extremely reasonable price. And that land will now be protected for all Saskatchewan citizens. Great elk population on there.
Great elk population, probably a reasonable deer population as well.
Excellent.
Now, is that land open to hunting?
It's open to hunting on foot only. It's also open to picnickers if they're very careful what they do, to photographers certainly. Anybody that wants to enjoy the outdoors, leave your vehicle on the road and you're welcome to walk through it.
But if somebody wanted to access this land, how can they find out about the land? How can they find out about its location? What do they do? Contact you? Contact the local wildlife federation?
Yes, they can do that either through the local wildlife federation or through ourselves. But we have land spread out throughout Saskatchewan. We've sort of changed an emphasis in the last 2 years in finding cultivated land, marginal land that should never have been cultivated. We've bought half a section down around Pontex, and it's kind of interesting because David Suzuki used that particular piece of land as a demonstration of the worst land management he had ever seen. It was atrocious. All the topsoil had blown off into the ditches. We bought it in conjunction with PFRA and are now converting it back to good grassland. We've put over 10,000 trees in that land, put in a dugout to provide water, and grassed it down. I'd like David Suzuki to come back and see that land now.
He'd probably like to see it too.
I'm sure he would.
But I've got a bit more of a difficult question, maybe one that might require some thought. I'm wondering about the demand for the use of these kinds of hunting lands. Are there really not more hunters than there are lands to support? And then how does that tie to the use of private lands?
As a matter of fact, our hunting population, as you probably know, Wilf, is on a bit of a decline.
Yes.
A lot of social reasons for that. Single-parent families, more and more people in the cities and moving off the land. Other priorities, I suspect. So that hunting population has been diminishing slowly. At the same time, and I suspect because of some very, very mild winters, our big game population is climbing very, very rapidly, particularly white-tailed mule deer and antelope in the southwest corner. So they're adjusting those seasons over there to compensate for that.
And these are becoming problem species in some areas as well, I understand.
That's a fact. Agricultural problems, problems getting into haystacks and feed. With,
Depredation.
Yes, very much so. Hopefully the seasons this year will be liberal enough to compensate for that and bring those populations back down.
Sure, and that's something we can all look forward to.